All right, guys, I wanted to do a quick video on naming bicyclic compounds. It's one of the last little pieces of naming, and depending on where you go to school or who your professor is, you may or may not need to be able to name them. In short, a bicyclic compound is when you have multiple rings that are fused together with between bridgehead carbons. And so if we take a look at, it's really quite simple to name these things. And so at the end of the day, it won't take long to kind of get this situation sorted out. So I want to switch really quickly back to the whiteboard, and we'll go from there. All right, so take a look at a cyclic compound like good old hexane here, and we could connect that hexane with another carbon like that. So if that, in this type of situation, you can say that you have two rings, and we can kind of illustrate the two rings. One to that ring there, and then we might have another ring like this. That could be the other ring, and the two rings are fused together. And the carbons that it fuses the rings together are called bridgehead carbons. And so how do we name bicyclic compounds? Well, at the end of the day, the way this works is that we're going to have the name bicyclo as instead of cyclo, we'll say bicyclo. So it'll be bicyclo it'll have a set of numbers A, B, C separated by dots, and then the alkane name. And as I said, it is fairly straightforward to name bicyclic compounds. And so the only difference is, what is this A, B, and C business, and what is the alkane name? And so let's take a look at some examples. We'll just redraw the ones that I already have, and we'll come up with another example that's a little bit more of a challenge. So if I start off with this first one, I had hexane, and I fused it together with one carbon. And so this is how this works. A, B, and C are the numbers of carbons that are between the bridgehead carbon in each of the, in this case, 3 positions. So let's take a look. What would those numbers be? Now, the only thing I want to point out with A, B, and C is that it's in numerical order. All right, so how does this work? Let's take a look. Here are the bridgehead carbons. Once you've identified the bridgehead carbons, then we want to count the numbers of carbons in between. Well, there's 2 carbons in between there. There's 2 carbons in between there, and there's only 1 carbon in between those 2 bridgehead carbons at that location. So the 2 numbers A, B, and C in this order are going to be 2.2.1. And so this is bicyclo 2.2.1. And now the little bit we have to figure out is, what is the alkane name? And it's very straightforward. The alkane name is going to be based on the total number of carbons in the molecule. And so take a look. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 around the hexane ring. And then there's that 7th carbon that's kind of in the middle, that's sort of that makes it bicyclo. So this is bicyclo 2.2.1 heptane. And so it's that straightforward. If we were to take this same example and use that other hexane that I had drawn before, where there were 2 carbons that kind of connected it together like this, then we're going to come up with the same, almost the same situation. It's bicyclo. There's 2 carbons in this one, 2 carbons in this one, and 2 carbons in this one between the bridge heads. So it's 2.2.2. And in this case, it's octane. So it's bicyclo 2.2.2 octane. Well, what about this? This is the last sort of situation to think about. Well, this is a bicyclic compound too. And if we were to identify the bridgehead carbons, then we would say there they are. And so how many carbons are here total? Well, there's total is 4. And so this would be bicyclo of some sort of butane. And how many carbons are in between the bridgeheads? Well, I've got 1.1, and I do want to put the other one 0 because there are no bridge carbons in between the bridgeheads along that bond. And so this is bicyclo 1.1.0 butane. It's that straightforward. If once we've done some naming in the past with straight chains and cyclohexanes, adding bicyclic compounds is very straightforward. Again, we're just going to add the word bicyclo in the front. We're going to have a series of numbers that represents the number of carbons between each bridgehead carbon. And the bridgeheads are the carbons that are connecting all of the different portions of the ring. And then we're going to have an alkane name, and the alkane name is based on the total number of carbons. So now you can take that and you can try something a little bit more difficult, like something like this. If you had what's this? Where's the bridgehead carbons? There and there. How many carbons in between here? 2. How many carbons in between there? 2. How many carbons in between over here? 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is bicyclo 4.2.2. And how many carbons total? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's decane. All right, guys. That's really all there is to it when it comes to bicyclic compounds. And so just take some practice from the homework and go at it. There's not really anything else. So if you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me.